Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am the Jer in the moniker Wellness with Jer. Thanks for stopping by and checking out the channel. Like, subscribe, all those YouTubey things are super helpful for us to navigate this weird world that is dictated by algorithms. Today, we are going to start a bit of a series, a thing I've been working on for a while, which is reviews of most, if not all, of the DC superhero movies. I have ADHD. It's a thing I've talked about a lot. And one of the weird things with ADHD is some of us experience some contrarian thought patterns. And so I'm one of those people who has a bit of a reputation for liking stuff other people don't like and disliking things that are popular just by virtue of them getting popular. And so I was one of those people who people would watch the DC movies and be like, oh, Jeremy will probably like it. I'm also a bit of a comic book nerd, so I can tell where people are drawing from, and some of these movies are drawing from which comic run, which just can be fun. Zack Snyder did 300 and Watchmen. I was a fan of those movies, so wanting to kind of see what happened with the DC movies. I saw Man of Steel when it came out, but otherwise, I don't think no, I can definitively say that I didn't see any of these in theater. And I also watched them in storyline order, not in release date order, which I saw online was a mistake. But again, that contrarian nature of my brain was like, meh, I can do what I want. I'll watch them in story order because that will make the most sense. And I would say watch them in release order, probably. I'll get to it in my review. But so I started with Wonder Woman, and that's the first one I'm going to review here, so I can kind of go in the order that my brain has. I watched them all in like a month, so we're going off of a little bit of memory on some of these reviews. Um, Wonder Woman is probably the DC movie that's reviewed the best, although I don't think it was the best one. I don't think it held up the best. Um, Gal Gadot stars as Wonder Woman. Patty Jenkins was the director. So, female director, female lead. The first cinematic movie that depicted Wonder Woman, actually. She was in Dawn of Justice, Batman versus Superman. So, but this is the first time she got her own movie. She had a TV show in the 80s. Um, Linda Carter. So that's interesting. I think for a lot of people that movie won the movie a lot of good graces. Watching it in 2024, I was not impressed, and I'm bummed to say that because I the movie was well liked, and I don't want to be contrarian. It's one of those things when people are like, everyone likes movies, then my contrarian brain is like, I'm gonna dislike it. It's not like a conscious choice. It's just how my brain works. But then also when people tell you, oh, you'll probably like it, you're contrarian to that too. It's a weird mix of like probably pervasive drive for autonomy, which is PDA, which many neurodivergent folks deal with, or some weird spin on rejection sensitivity dysphoria. If you want to know about the psychological concepts before I get into the comic book concepts. But yeah, I didn't love it. I don't think it held up. And there's a bunch of storytelling beats that like I really wanted to like. So one of my big criticisms of superhero movies in general is that they tell too basic of a version of morality. And so bad guy shows up, he's the bad guy, he's the monster. If we just beat him, things will be okay. And I do think the DC movies did a nice job of trying to move beyond that. They just kept being beholden to it. So the villain in Wonder Woman is war. And like Ares, the god of war, is the villain. But for almost all of the movie, and according to Patty Jenkins, the movie she wanted to make didn't have Ares ever really showing up as a big bad. And honestly, it's kind of a disappointment in the movie. Great actor, um, David Thewlis. He's British. I don't know how to say his name. It's not his real name. It's a stage name. He's a delight. He's in Fargo. He's a bad guy in a bunch of stuff. He's a really, really fantastic actor. So as soon as you saw him, though, you knew he was not a good guy. You can't cast that actor in that role and be like, he works for the military. He's probably a good guy. Like, we all knew he was bad. But it's one of those things where they wanted to do a morally complex story. I think what Patty Jenkins has said in interviews is that she never wanted Ares to like be the god of war. Like he was Ares, but she never wanted him to like fight, which honestly might have made a better movie, but I can definitely see in that climate of superhero films where people would have also oddly been disappointed about that. Some of these comic book movies, I think like the directors just need to like decide what they want to do and do it. Zack Snyder gets a lot of flack for the way he's directed the movies, but he's told the comic book stories he's wanted to tell. And I'll get into that too, because we're going to review some of the movies that he directed. Um, but yeah, so like morally gray, I think. Maybe not like morally gray, just like beyond the basics of good versus evil. Wonder Woman definitely portrays that like good character. I think in some of the other DC movies, she gets to show more nuance. I think even in like Dawn of Justice, she's kind of like a cheeky, coy character who's not like a goody two shoes. Where then in Wonder Woman, her standalone film, she's much more like I would say basic, which again, for all the love this movie got, isn't necessarily what I was expecting from it. I thought she'd be a more layered character. She's allowed to show sadness and grief, self doubt, some things that I think Captain Marvel wasn't allowed to show. And so again, like I think Gal Gadot was awesome, very well done. Casting was really great. I feel like such terrible criticism for female leads in movies where they're action stars, because it's like, oh, if they're muscular, they're gonna get flack for that, but if they're too feminine, they're gonna get flack for that. Just like the weird misogyny that we've normalized in our culture as like we can all criticize them all the time for anything. Like Henry Cavill and all the male superheroes probably have done horrific things to their bodies to look the way they look. Chris Hemsworth, all those dudes. Like, I've got a Thor like build, but I don't have muscles like that. I've never done steroids either. But like again, the way that actors shoot those films is they'll drink nothing but water for a couple days, and they'll go on a water fast, and they'll be fasted from food. And so like you're like hallucinating and dizzy while you're filming, but hey, your abs look really good. That's dumb. We should stop doing that. It's unhealthy. But also the misogyny for females is like again, the criticism there is like, oh, she's too muscly, or she's not muscly enough. She doesn't smile enough. She smiles too much. She's not a real superhero. Like just yucky, gross misogyny throughout our culture. So I think Gal Gadot, while still getting like incels riled up on the internet, but who cares? We should ignore those people. Uh, Pretty universally acclaimed for her role. I think was really good casting, and she seems like similar. I've seen comparisons to like the way that we think of Tony Stark is Robert Downey Jr. I think the way we think of Wonder Woman is uh, Gal Gadot. Like that good of a casting, that good of a actor who got into the role and really embodied it. So really fantastic. The story they're going for again, I think is interesting. I just think it was executed poorly. And some of that again is like Patty Jenkins has said, like the DC executives said, like, nah, we want Ares in the film. We want a battle between Ares and Wonder Woman. Like, we need it. And they had pretty much wrapped the movie and had to like do reshoots and stuff. So executives meddling and stuff, because of course they do. But also, I think the way that Wonder Woman was kind of introduced was boring. Origin stories are tough, and watching 7 or 8 superhero movies in a month was not necessarily awesome for my brain. I got real nitpicky with them. But this was the first one I watched, and I really wanted to like it. I work with religious trauma, so maybe for those of you who are new to the channel, I have a bunch of different specialties because I have ADHD. But it's one of those things where I work with religious trauma regularly, and there was just a lot that was like coded as like uh the Amazons are a cult. The Amazonians are a cult. Growing up on Themyscira is like not a good thing. So when Diana leaves and she joins the real world, she's a bit of a dunce, and like it probably maybe doesn't read this way to everyone who watched the film, but for me it was really heavily coded on like growing up in a cult, and some of the trauma that goes with that. So a fighter pilot crash lands. He interrupts their beautiful paradise of an island, and they're like, "Oh no, war has come to our island. It's Ares." And Diana's like, "No, maybe he's a good guy because he's attractive?" Question mark. And so the movie kind of goes from there. And like again, I'm oversimplifying, but kind of not. That's not a great storytelling beat. It's fine. And again, like comics can be great when they're really well done, but I don't know a ton of comics that are like really renowned as origin stories unless they go way off of what is already the established kind of motif for that character. So I don't know, origin stories are tough. I think comic books could just stop doing them, especially the movies. Like we have enough of them. I don't know. Um, so I think that wasn't necessary. I think watching the films out of order, like I did, again, I watched them in storyline order instead of release date order. I don't think that made it as good either, because some of the maybe Easter eggs and stuff that have been hinted at in other movies, I didn't see them coming or I didn't connect them, and so didn't really get that full benefit from them. So I think it's one of those things where, yeah, watch it in release date, and that would be a little bit better. The morality of it, again, I think is it was trying to move beyond good versus bad, but Diana is just like this. She's unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, just with superpowers. Like she's coming out of a cult. She's like trying to get her bearings in the world and doesn't know anything. Has a really basic idea of morality, and if that was like done better, I think it could have been a little bit of like breaking the fourth wall of like, haha, all these superhero stories have this basic ass morality and we need to be better than that. But like again, it's kind of presented as like she grew up super sheltered, doesn't know a lot about morality, has this basic morality, and then still is just the hero with this basic morality at the end of the movie. So she has like character development and grows throughout the movie. So it's not a criticism that she's like one dimensional, but that aspect of morality is definitely one dimensional for her character. And she doesn't really grow out of that at all. Like, okay, she decides that it's okay to like sleep with men and own her sexuality. Like, cool, really healthy for people coming out of cults. But again, like that's not how the story's told. So I'm taking a real life scenario and saying like this is a good moral to tell and trying to put it on the film that's not really the moral that it tells. Again, in 2017, I think when this movie came out, like this probably maybe would have felt more revolutionary. So seeing it many years later, I was kind of like, meh, feminism in a movie, like it's been done better in other places, which is true. It's my criticism of Barbie too. Like if this is your introduction to feminism, it's great. If you have any knowledge on things or background in what feminism can actually look like, pretty basic. And I guess that's kind of how I feel about the feminism in Wonder Woman too. Like could have been better. Spoiler alert, gets a lot worse in Wonder Woman 1984. Um, bit of a spoiler there. That movie was disappointing. DC loves like the big, like rousing soundtrack and like that heroic thing. Superman learning to fly, Wonder Woman pretending to fly, which again was embarrassing. Like that wasn't a good scene. So I think they avoided a lot of that. I thought the score was good. I thought the action throughout the movie was good. Honestly, I think setting it during a world war was kind of fun. Like switched it up a little bit. I don't think I ever saw Captain America. Now that I'm filming, I didn't prep my Marvel movies for this review. I just prepped my DC movies. I don't think I ever saw the Captain America movie, so maybe that was set in World War, Steve Rogers. But yeah, I thought like that was a good setting. I think the DC movies relied way too heavily on green screen and CGI, and that in 7 years already hasn't aged well. CGI as a tool to make physical effects look better works really well. CGI as the entire fucking movie, not that great. Doesn't hold up. Like the technology just moves beyond it so much faster. So like Lord of the Rings 2001 holds up because they did almost all practical effects and just used CGI to make it look a little bit better. And like obviously Gollum's almost all CGI, but like wasn't all green screen, so then it holds up a little bit better. Where a lot of this stuff is just like I don't know, the green screen can be not awesome at certain points in the film. So hopefully we're moving away from that. I mean, they didn't Black Adam's like all green screen too. COVID was weird because he kind of had to green screen a lot of stuff, I guess. But um so yeah, and then I don't know, the relationships in the movies aren't awesome. I don't necessarily think like Diana's an empowered character from a feminism perspective. I think she falls in love with the first dude she meets, and like that's her beat. And it takes until like the next movie for someone to pull her out of that and kind of call her on it. And that's like the whole plot of the second movie. It's not the whole plot, but again, so like just kind of like it's still almost damsel in distress plot, even though she's like the hero. She's not the damsel, but when it comes to romance, she's the damsel. And again, if they had done something with like growing up in a cult and religious trauma, I think maybe, but they didn't. So I just feel like there was a like complex, interesting story to tell, and they started to tell it, and then they just got pulled back into common superhero tropes. Could have been a really great movie for subversion, but again, just like introducing here's a character who grew up sheltered and then not doing a whole lot with it. Here's a character who has basic morality and then not doing a lot with it. I think again, even the concept of like Ares just being like, huh, shrugging at the end of the movie and being like, I didn't do anything. This is all you humans. They're the worst. Could have been an interesting story, but it's like, nah, we got to have the hero battle the bad guy. And again, like at that point, it just didn't work that well. The actor playing Ares is a character actor, not necessarily an action movie character. So if you want to go like Greek mythology Ares, then like almost I don't know, have a body double or something who comes in at that point. And like that's where you could have used CGI, I guess, to have that fight with a much better version of a mythological god that Wonder Woman's gonna fight with. It's just kind of like, I don't know, maybe it didn't age well because again, everybody loved it in 2017. It's got an A on Rotten Tomatoes. Lots of people liked pretty much everything except for the end of the movie. Just that like climactic action scene ending with Ares fighting Wonder Woman. But I don't know that it holds up all that well. And again, like they're gonna redo the DC movies, so why am I doing these reviews now? I don't know. Because I watched all the movies and I want to talk about them, I guess. Tom King, who's a multi-time Eisner Award winner, is doing a pretty great run on a Wonder Woman right now. So again, like I think if you want to get into a Wonder Woman story that has complexity and some depth, like go to your local comic shop and pick up Tom King's run on Wonder Woman that he's doing right now. I think there's a lot of great stories to tell. I'm kind of optimistic about the DC rebrand because James Gunn is going to be in charge of it. And James Gunn did Guardians of the Galaxy for Marvel, which probably Guardians of the Galaxy 1 might be Marvel's best superhero movie. And we'll get to some of the other stuff. We'll get to Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, both of which James Gunn was directing or heavily involved in, which I think were two of the better things that DC has done. Suicide Squad is a lot of fun, and Peacemaker as a show was fantastic. I'm biased. I'm happy anytime a pro wrestler turns out. I don't want to say John Cena is not an awful person, but when a pro wrestler does well in mainstream media, I'm not saying John Cena is not a good person. I think John Cena's got some issues, like most pro wrestlers. So does The Rock, and Black Adam was terrible versus Suicide Squad and Peacemaker being a lot of fun. So I'm a little optimistic James Gunn might turn it around. I honestly think like keep Gal Gadot. She was really well cast. She was fantastic. I think it just worked really well, I think. But I also think the thing with comics is you can do a bunch of different versions of this. So I think like have an absolutely jacked Wonder Woman who like beats people up and is just like I mean, Wonder Woman is as badass as the rest of the Justice League, the dudes in the Justice League. So like I'm not bemoaning that she wasn't badass enough. I'm just saying you could do a couple of different versions of this character. I very much want a Mr. Miracle movie just so we can have Big Barda as a character. So again, like I think Gal Gadot is really great. I also wouldn't hate seeing other versions of Wonder Woman. So I think there's stuff there if DC gets away from like trying to be the MCU and just is like, let's be like as weird as we want. The comics get really weird sometimes. DC Black Label is some of the best comic runs in comic book history, just characters outside of canon getting to do a thing. So I'm optimistic. I think I don't know. I think this movie, if you really liked it when it came out, is maybe worth a rewatch, and you can drop down in the comments and argue with me on why I'm wrong. I just don't think it held up awesomely as somebody who's coming into it fresh in 2024. I didn't love it. It was fine. Um, the DCEU gets worse. I would say there's only a handful of movies that are worth watching from the DC movie catalog, and this is one of them. Like again, I don't think it was a bad film. I just think it didn't deliver on the third act what it promised in the first act, and so it was a little bit of a disappointment. I thought it introduced a lot of interesting concepts. I thought it was well acted. I just don't know that it delivered all the way. So that was a bit of a bummer. The bummer gets a lot worse in Wonder Woman 84. So womp womp. That's gonna be the next one I review because again, I'm doing it in chronological or in storytelling order instead of release date. So I'm already prepped for that, and I don't have a lot of good things to say about it. Genuinely, it's disappointing. Again, I'm not, like, happy that stuff isn't well done. I love movies. I want movies to be well done. I love comic books. I want comics to be well done. I just played through Spider-Man 2 with my 6-year-old. We got a PlayStation 5 finally, and we just played through it, and, like, fantastic. So much fun. This is not a separate review for Spider-Man 2, but, like, the story's great, the action's great, the way you get to do the character is great. Miles Morales is in it. It's fantastic. Like, that's so good. And why can't we, if we can do those stories in a video game, why can't we have those stories as a movie? We keep turning video games into movies. Why can't we just get the good story in the movie? Is what I want to know. I would very much love to watch a Wonder Woman movie that's awesome that I have no feedback on. 0 notes. I would like to see that movie. Don't have it be an origin story and just let her be a badass the whole time. And be a human, have feelings, and also be a badass. Because again, that's cool. So, Wonder Woman, I think it's worth a review. I think it's gonna hold up over time as like this was really important in that time and place in cinema for this character. Gal Gadot, I think, will be iconic in the role. I think there's a lot of good that came out of the movie. I just don't know that it in a vacuum is a good movie. But yeah, I mean, for that cultural stuff and that piece of it, I think it's important. I think it's worth watching. I think it's worth going out and renting or buying or having it in your movie catalog. Because again, I think kind of a historic film, an iconic character played by in an iconic way. So I think some of that stuff will definitely withstand the test of time. I just don't know that the movie itself is all that good. But I'm skeptical of as somebody who loves comics and, like, loves movies, I don't think that many superhero films are all that great either. It's Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. No, I mean, I said there's one Guardians like, the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie was good. After that, yeah. I wasn't a big fan of the MCU like everyone else was, and again, that's some of the contrarian stuff coming out, but yeah. Come back for a critical review of Wonder Woman 84, which wasn't good. But then I'll talk about Man of Steel, which I think is still pretty good. Not flawless, but pretty good. Um, before we get into some of the Justice League stuff, where things go a bit off track for the DC expanded universe. And then honestly, I didn't even like track down Flash or Black Adam because I was kind of burnt out on it. And I think when James Gunn kind of comes in, the paths of the movies clearly diverge and it'll be a different feel. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that with the review of both Suicide Squad movies. And I have a lot of things to say about Peacemaker. I loved it. If I'm in a bad mood and I want to watch something that makes me happy, the intro to Peacemaker has never failed to put a smile on my face. It's delightful. So come on this journey with me while I talk about the DC cinematic universe and all the things that are wrong with it, but we'll end on a hopeful note of a lot of fun things, hopefully to come with the rebrand under James Gunn. So Thanks for stopping by and checking out the channel, everybody, as I talk about a movie that's 7 years old. But I love comics and I love superheroes. So happy to talk about that stuff. Happy to talk about some of the psychological concepts, which, spoiler alert, especially when it gets to Peacemaker, I have a lot more to say about it. So thanks for stopping by, checking out the channel, like, subscribe, share, drop down in the comments, argue with me about superheroes. It's one of my favorite pastimes. And again, thanks so much. Take care, everybody. Peace.